One thing I didn't consider during the Israel-Palestine conflict, where innocent Palestinians are being killed in their thousands, were the feelings of our MPs. I should have been far more considerate of those who undergo this incredibly tough job. I stupidly spent far too long thinking about the bombs raining down on people, the families being separated, and the children dying due to lack of access to hospitals in Gaza, when really I should have been far more receptive to the needs of those who sit in the Commons, decide our laws, and get paid over 80 grand per year, not including expenses and second homes. Now, obviously, I'm taking the piss, but this is an actual thing. Like, it's an actual take. So the Green Party shared a graphic detailing the voting record of MPs on the ceasefire vote that happened a few days ago, along with the tweet saying this: "Last night, Parliament had the opportunity to vote to support a ceasefire and the release of hostages in Gaza. Sadly, the Labour Party is in chaos and is failing to deliver what constituents are demanding. Is your MP on the list?" This was then quote tweeted by the country's most underrated MP, Mike Gapes, who said, "Two MPs have been murdered by extremists in their constituency since 2016, and here are the Green Party publishing a hit list." Thanks, Mike. Labour councillor John Hayward, who I've had a few runs myself, echoed the same sentiment. "Two MPs have been murdered in the past decade, and more have been attacked by people wielding weapons. This is just utterly irresponsible and the worst politics of the gutter. Shame." I mean, I don't know why they don't get the police involved. This is obviously a terrible, terrible crime from the Green Party. I mean, holding other parties to their voting record, it's unthinkable for a rival party to do. I mean, I think the Greens should just campaign on vote Labour. Obviously, this is ridiculous. It's not a hit list. It's a graphic of public information which you can look up yourself. Really, the Greens are doing a job of holding our MPs to account, which they don't like. The problem with our political system isn't the lack of anger and outrage. The problem is where it's directed. Publishing voting records, wow, that's just abhorrent. It's disgusting. But voting to continue the bombing and the attack on Palestinians, well, that's all good. Like, I'm so sick of this performative crap. Most of our MPs voted in support of genocide, even if they didn't think that was what they were doing. In a utilitarian sense, that is what they did. MPs have such a sense of entitlement. They hate being held accountable, and this is just reinforced by our undemocratic system. Now, the outrage doesn't end there. Another heinous crime was committed against Labour MP Joe Stevens. Police have launched an investigation after a Labour MP who abstained on the Gaza vote had her office vandalised. Shadow Welsh Secretary Joe Stevens' Cardiff office was daubed in red paint and covered in posters which accused her of having blood on her hands. She called the incident intimidating and threatening. And of course, some have had a lot to say about this. Labour MP Harriet Harman said this: "This is criminal damage and it's an attack on democracy. Solidarity with Joe Stevens, and shame on those who use intimidation to try and stop MP doing her job." I mean, I'd say the fact that a massive majority of people want a ceasefire, yet most of our MPs voted against it, is an issue for democracy. But whatever. This deliberate intimidation of female Labour MPs is just pretty sick at this point. You should be able to disagree with a stance or a vote without vandalising their office and intimidating them and their staff. How this helps your cause, I don't know. Sorry, but this isn't a discussion on fucking tax policy where we can have a civilised conversation. This is about genocide. Where is the outrage and the urgency? It's just insane. Look, I want to be clear. I don't want violence against MPs. I'm no extremist. It's wrong. And I'm well aware that two MPs were murdered in the last decade, as brought up by those I quoted earlier. But the murder of David Amos was by an Islamist extremist, and contrary to what many in the media want you to think, being pro-Palestinian doesn't make you a religious extremist. And in terms of Jo Cox, she was murdered by the far right, and it's still true that the far right commit way more acts of violence. I'm not calling on people to spray paint buildings of MPs. I'm a commentator, not an activist, but what else do you expect people to do? People resort to tactics such as spray painting buildings because they have no choice. Over 70% of the people want a ceasefire, and up to 800,000 people marched last Saturday for a ceasefire, yet most of our MPs didn't back it. So when our so-called representatives don't listen, then other direct action is needed. Like, I'm genuinely asking a question here. If you ignore what the people want, if you ignore petitions, marches, letters, then you will see more radical direct action. And I'm sorry, but this isn't even that bad. Like painting on a building. Right now, the blood of innocent Palestinians are being painted all over Gaza because of the genocidal tactics of Israel. Be disgusted at that. I'm sorry this may seem visceral, and I'm sorry that you're offended by posters saying MPs have blood on their hands. But that's the point. It's supposed to be outrageous because what is happening is outrageous. Imagine if we lived in a world without radicals, and instead we stuck to the tactics of the sensible liberal. Oh, women can't vote. Oh, well, I'm outraged. We must start a petition. Slavery is bad. Well, make sure you call up your local politician and give them some stern words, but no swearing. The world would be far worse than it is today. We owe it to the radicals. And I think I'd be less annoyed by those who are outraged if I actually believe they were instead of pretending to be. And I'm mostly talking about the Labour right here. Calling people extremists and terrorist sympathisers is far more dangerous for the well-being of MPs than some paint. Yet it's those outraged lot who are very happy joining on the media pylon that Jeremy Corbyn and the left were extremists. Did they care about safety then? Did they stop this loaded language after Corbyn was a target of a terrorist attack? No, and they still do it today. Some are calling, who support Palestinians, and anyone who attends ceasefire marches, Hamas supporters. You don't think that's dangerous? Oh, but silence from the usual suspects. So spare me with this virtue signalling crap and direct your anger at the real problem, which is the genocide of the Palestinian people.